Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose, and I mean, what an odd day for the game industry. Yeah, we actually got news of a console that outsold the PlayStation 5 a few weeks back during the Black Friday week, and this is neither a Nintendo or an Xbox console. So there's been a lot of shock and confusion over this console, but when you really start to think about it, I don't think that you should be. If anything, I think this actually highlights a problem that both Xbox and PlayStation have in terms of their first-party portfolio. In fact, we're also going to talk about a game that Xbox fans right now are begging for them to fund. So make sure to stick around, but first, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's go get right into things, though, starting off with the Game Awards and one of its big highlight reveals. They just confirmed that Resident Evil 9 will make an appearance. You can see here where they said that horror always survives. Tune in for a terrifying new look at Resident Evil Requiem during the Game Awards, streaming next Thursday on December 11th at 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time. And honestly, this is probably my most anticipated game for 2026 because, for one, I love the Resident Evil series, but also from what they've shown of it so far, I think it looks great. That's kind of my thing about this reveal, though. Everybody feels different about this type of stuff, but truthfully, for me, I don't really need another trailer by this point just because I'm already sold on it. For me, I'm kind of in that stage of where the less I see of it, the better, because that way when I do play it, there will be more surprises. If anything, though, I know that there's still a lot of rumors that Leon Kennedy is a playable character, and it would be really cool if they were to confirm something like that at the Game Awards. Leon is probably the most popular Resident Evil character, and if he truly is in the game, that would be a really exciting thing for them to show at the biggest showcase of the year in terms of viewership. I mean, fans would go crazy over something like that, and Capcom would really cash in on that massive audience. Oh, and a new game that PlayStation has been involved with just got its full gameplay reveal, being Godslayer. Now, this is actually another game from Sony's China Joy project, which has really been a smart investment by Sony. I mean, China is on the rise in terms of their AAA games, and we've seen that from games like Genshin Impact and, of course, Wukong. So could maybe Godslayer be the next big hit from China? I mean, we'll see. But based on its work-in-progress gameplay, I think it looks fairly promising. Now, that is important to kind of keep in mind here, though. This is early gameplay, and it doesn't necessarily represent the final product. So any kind of jank that you see could potentially be ironed out with more polish over time. But even still, so far, I think the visuals look pretty good. And the gameplay itself is quite creative with its element magic-based combat. It also has its own identity, and that's probably the thing that I like the most about these Eastern games that are coming from China and even Korea. We are seeing a different tone and vibe from their games because they do have a very different culture, and we can see that through the worlds, the characters, and the stories that they create. It's something a bit different for the industry, and you know, that's one of the cool things about this announcement. Now, another cool thing about this announcement, though, is that, again, Godslayer came from Sony's China Joy project, but it's not just coming to PlayStation this time. For the first time ever, a Sony China Joy project will launch on Xbox and on PC alongside PlayStation day one. So that's a bit of a surprise, but as we've kind of learned these past few years, Sony is becoming a little bit more open to the idea of multi-platform, and in this case, they gave Pythia permission to support all platforms, so good on them. Now, we also got an update for the Warner Brothers acquisition. As I mentioned when we first heard about a potential acquisition, this buyout was unlikely to be linked to a game-first company. You know, Microsoft and Tencent were really the only players that would have had the money to go for an acquisition like this, and really neither made sense for different reasons. Instead, though, it really came down to Netflix and Paramount. Obviously, Warner Brothers has a wealth of IP that both companies could use for their streaming services, and, well, after a bidding war, Netflix came away as the winner. Now, we are talking about an $82 billion buyout, which will include its film and television studios, HBO Max, and HBO, as well as their gaming studios, which of course is the reason that we're talking about them today. That means that NetherRealm, TT Games, and Rocksteady will be under the Netflix umbrella if this acquisition goes through, and as we've seen in years past, that is kind of the next big question. Will regulators get involved like they did with Microsoft and Activision? Now, personally, I think in this specific case, I think they should at least consider it, because this is a leading streaming company basically buying out one of their biggest competitors. That could be a red flag, but nonetheless, in terms of gaming, this would give Netflix 3 AAA studios if they so desire to enter that space with more authority. I mean, they could even make a Stranger Things game if they wanted to. But at the end of the day, that's really not the reason that they acquired Warner Brothers. It's hard to say what their exact plans are for the gaming division, but it is a shakeup for the game industry all the same. All right, now let's just go and shift one over to maybe the most surprising story of the year, being about a console that outsold the PlayStation 5 for the week ending on November 22nd. And yes, that is the beginning of the Black Friday week, which means it's also one of the best-selling weeks for the year when it comes to consoles. So this is a significant outcome, but yeah. As you can see here, Circana's Matt Piscatella said that U.S. best-selling hardware SKUs for week ending on November 22nd of 2025 ranked on units sold. 1. Nintendo Switch 2 Mario Kart World Bundle. 2. NEX Playground Interactive Gaming System. And then 3. PlayStation 5 Slim Digital 1 TB. So most gamers probably weren't too prepared for this discovery. I mean, let's be honest about things. Most of us probably haven't even heard of the NEX Playground console until today. So what exactly is happening here, and how in the world did it outsell both the PlayStation and Xbox during the early part of Black Friday week? Well, the thing is that when I started to look into this, everything just kind of clicked into place. This isn't as crazy as it might first sound. So what's happening here is that it's an affordable console. It goes for $250, though you do need a subscription. That's going to add to the price. But the big thing is that it's advertised for families with young kids. It's almost a Kinect-like console. You don't need a controller or anything like that. Instead, it's all controlled through its camera, similar to the Kinect, that long-forgotten Xbox device that everybody hated. I mean, if you remember, hardcore gamers were not a fan of Kinect, and I'd say for a very good reason. The Kinect wasn't necessarily a bad idea, it's just terrible for hardcore gaming. But I'm also going to go and point out that the original Kinect for the Xbox 360 was, and still is, one of the fastest selling peripherals of all time. It went on to sell 10 million units in a very short period of time, and the games that did really well for it were games that appealed to families and children. Games like Kinect Sports and Just Dance did very well. The big problem that Xbox ran into is that it didn't appeal to their core user base on Xbox. And that was a problem with just Xbox's strategy in general. I mean, if they would have made a completely separate standalone console that focused only on Kinect games, and if it would have been affordable, then, maybe it could have done very well. They just marketed it to the wrong audience. Now, this also, I think, kind of highlights an issue that both Xbox and PlayStation currently have. See, the big thing about the NEX Playground console is that it caters to families. And in both Xbox and PlayStation case, this is an audience that they rarely cater to themselves. I mean, most of Sony and Xbox's games by this point are either big AAA games or live service titles. They don't really make a lot of games that cater specifically to families and children. And in my opinion, that shouldn't be the case. I mean, they have IP like Banjo Kazooie, Sly Cooper, Spyro the Dragon, and Little Big Planet. So they could appeal to that audience if they want to, but we rarely get new installments for any of those franchises. I mean, honestly, the only big console maker that seems to understand the importance of starting gamers when they're young is Nintendo. And look at the type of success that Nintendo has with both younger gamers and also longtime gamers that grew up with Nintendo games. They stay with them for life. And I've talked about this before, but I do think that this is a serious hole in Xbox and PlayStation strategy. They seemingly have completely forgotten how to foster a young audience and to keep them for the long term. And that could come back to bite them in, let's say, 10 to 20 years from now, when the kids today have grown up without much knowledge of either Xbox or PlayStation, because they don't make games specifically for them. Either which way, though, the next Playground console proves a few very important things. One is that Kinect isn't necessarily a terrible idea after all. And also, a console that focuses strictly on families certainly, yes, can be very successful. Now, speaking of Banjo-Kazooie a moment ago, though, a few days back, we talked about this new fan-made game by the name of Banjo-Kazooie Mumbomania. Now, this is kind of a strange game on paper in a sense that it was created using Dreams, the PlayStation-developed game by Media Molecule. So, despite Banjo-Kazooie being an Xbox-owned IP, not only is it technically a PlayStation exclusive, but it's also a part of a game that massively flopped on PlayStation to the point that Sony wouldn't even port it over to PC, which is so sad to think about because honestly, Dreams would have been a much better fit for the PC than it would have been on PlayStation. Really kind of a mental lapse on their part, but regardless, Mumbomania not only proves how amazing the Dreams creation tools are, but it also shows Xbox what a Banjo-Kazooie 3 could actually look like. And that right there has been a very interesting outcome that has come from this creation because a lot of people have taken notice of this fan-made Banjo-Kazooie project. Multiple key developers from Rare have tweeted out about this project, including the studio itself. You can see the official Rare handle here where they said, "Put our fanciest hat on just so we could tip it to this." Incredible work. So Mumbomania has been making waves online, and for a very good reason. Fans are raving about how good it is, and the creator mentioned this on Twitter. Since numerous people have asked, Mumbomania is just one level, and there are no plans to add any more. I'd like to move away from big Dreams projects now, so unless I get the opportunity to work on an official Banjo 3, which I would be thrilled to, this is it for now. And with that information, fans immediately started to tweet at Xbox, Phil Spencer, and Rare for them to make this happen. Everybody is seemingly asking them to please fund this person and to get the ball rolling for a Banjo-Kazooie 3. I mean, that's the thing about this project. Mumbomania has some really clever ideas in terms of its mechanics and transformations. I would recommend watching a walkthrough if you don't have access to Dreams because it really is cool. However, I could easily see how its ideas could take shape in a complete full game if Xbox wanted to make it happen. I mean, they would have to supply a team for this person, but they have the people to do something like that if they wanted to. They could go out and ask Toys for Bob, Rare, maybe Double Fine, or even Moon Studios, which has talked about them wanting to do a Banjo-Kazooie game as well. I mean, this is a very possible situation, but as we've kind of seen, Xbox, for whatever reason, have been very reluctant to do anything with the Banjo IP, which is just so crazy to me. I mean, they could have had their own Mario if they would have actually committed to the Banjo-Kazooie IP over time, but for whatever reason, Xbox and Rare have instead just kind of twiddled their thumbs for decades. I don't know, it's just so frustrating to think about, but who knows? Gamers right now are begging Phil Spencer to make this project happen, and with that, hey, you all can go pester him as well if you want. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.